Mentally or physically, success could be defined as getting up one more time after you've been knocked down over and over and over again. My name is T Wood, and this is Triumphant Moments, where I highlight significant moments in life that are far beyond the surface to inform, encourage, and inspire people to triumph over life's challenges. With me is Reverend Dr. Herron Gaston. He is a prominent and prolific Democratic intellectual and civil rights activist. Dr. Gaston is a former Associate Director of Admissions and Recruitment at Yale University Divinity School. Dr. Gaston has also worked with several high-powered politicians at the local, state, and national level, including Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Bill Nelson, Frederica Wilson, Al Lawson, Charlie Crist, and the late great John Lewis. Dr. Gaston holds degrees in political science, public administration, public policy, and divinity. The list can go on and on and on, but I just want to say welcome, Dr. Gaston. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm so blessed and incredibly fortunate to be alive, my brother, in this day and age. What's happening?
Look, I appreciate you taking out time this afternoon to, out of your very busy schedule to come here to Triumphant Moments. We really feel that you have a story that would encourage and press someone to move forward in any difficult times. So what I want to do here, I want to start with you at a young age. I still think you're very young, personally, but let's just say you at a younger age, okay? So the way we want to look at it is, let's say by the age, what does the age between 17 to 22, 23-year-olds look like for you as far as education-wise?
Well, most, within that age bracket, folks are trying to figure out exactly what it is they want to do. They have a lot of curiosity that they're willing to scratch and just trying to discover what their passions are, what their commitments are, and what educational attainment they want to acquire within that age group. And also, that's when folks are most impressionable. They also are malleable in terms of, what they can become. So they ask themselves a lot of probing questions of what do I see myself doing in the world? How do I see myself making change? How do I see myself making an impact? And so I too have been that age before, have asked those same questions.
Right.
But by the time I was 21 years old, I had already acquired a master's degree, which in most places that's kind of uncommon for young people to have at least a graduate level degree at 21.
Now, is it safe to say that you've even had some nicknames such as Boy Wonder? Because you really accomplished so much by that time.
Right. So I grew up in a very religious family who told me that, education is the bridge to the future. It's the cornerstone by which your success so heavily depends upon. But also they also said to me that, faith is the cornerstone that allows us to sort of break through the challenges of life, but also to position ourselves to be able to manage those crises once they come, because it's inevitable that you'll have challenges. So at a very early age, I grew up in the church, and from there, my grandmother instilled in me that education is crucially important, and so she encouraged that very early on. And so I was always a student that did well and flourished in school. I was the class president in high school, salutatorian in my high school. I skipped the 8th grade and went directly into the 9th grade. So I'm actually a little bit ahead. And after my high school experience, I joined so many different clubs and organizations within the community. One of the highlights is the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And I was the president of that organization. And so that's where I think that the passion for civil rights and equality and fighting against institutional and structural racism and social inequalities came into play. And so I recall that at 17 years old, I was the helm of leadership in NAACP Youth Council in Haines City, Florida. And there was a incident that had happened with our Haines City Police Department where there was an officer-involved shooting where an African-American young man was killed at the hand of the police. And I helped to champion that cause. We brought out about maybe 375 students into the streets in the community protesting and to detest the violence that had happened. And we were successfully able to get an indictment of the officer and, get enough attention around the issue that it generated a lot of social change within the Haines City community. So that's sort of my first introduction to being a foot soldier for justice.
Now, as I look at it, I mentioned degrees earlier. Could you give us an idea of where you received your degrees from?
Yes, I graduated from the infamous Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University that sits on the Seven Hills in Tallahassee, Florida. I did a bachelor's in political science, pre-law studies, and I also have a master's of public administration in political science from Florida A&M.
Now, at such a young age, you just mentioned the various things that you've done that show leadership qualities. What kept you pressing on to keep putting yourself in these leadership positions? You could have just kind of followed the crowd, but somehow, some way, you kept finding yourself in a leadership position at this young age.
Yeah, well, wisdom from older generations have taught that, go ye not where the path may lead, but go ye instead where there is no path and leave a trail. One of the great things about being an American is that we harp on this whole individual thing, that there's no one quite like you on the planet, no one quite like you that can do what it is that you can do. And so with that kind of American individuality, though we do belong to social groups, I think that gives me the drive and the passion to make a difference in this world, that I fundamentally believe, just as a person of faith, that God has called me to do something unique in the world to which he has called me to. And so on these Western sands, I feel that there's so much that I could do. And when you look at, the various kinds of systemic and social inequalities around us, it literally is sucking the lifeblood out of allowing us to flourish as human beings. And so I want to make a difference in that regard. And growing up in a minority context and growing up as a Black man in America, you can clearly see from a very early age that you are at a disadvantage. And so therefore, I'm fighting to make sure that all people are included, especially the African-American community.
Now, it says here that previously you served in the governor's office in Florida?
Yes, I did. I worked in the governor's office in Florida. I was one of 13 students in the state of Florida that was handpicked by the governor to work in the executive office of the governor. And we also were appointed to one of the federal and state agencies. And I, at that time, was appointed to the Florida Department of Corrections. And at that time, I was the youngest person who was a assistant director of reentry in Florida, helping release prisoners reintegrate back into society, helping them to get IDs, Social Security cards, so on and so forth, so that they might be able to get back out and contribute to the global economic marketplace. I was one of the ones that was behind the formerly incarcerated individuals having their rights restored under the then governor, Charlie Crist.
Wow. Now, what triggered that? What triggered that idea for you to do that?
Well, because, I come from a family where there are many that have taken the track of going the educational track. And then I also have family members who are victims of the criminal justice system or have gone into the criminal justice system. And so, all too often I've experienced the ease with which young, Black men who look like me fall in the crushing yoke of injustice by an inherently prejudicial criminal justice system. And so I was very passionate about addressing those issues. I mean, we know that we are a country that has a system of laws, but just because the laws are on the book doesn't make the laws just. And so there are a lot of people who are behind bars, including some in my family, who were falsely accused of various kinds of infractions and some, did the crime, but definitely are experiencing excessive punitive punishment as a result of, a mild infraction with the law that they're seeing 20, 30 years. So I want to be able to make some inroads on that and to help people to know that, once you come from behind that invisible institution, that your life is not over, that there's so much more that you could do. And so helping to create those opportunities for people to get back out there, I think is very important.
Does that play a role in the creation of the Gaston Justice Coalition Group? Could you tell us more about that?
Oh, yeah. So the Gaston Justice Coalition Group, was sort of harked off of most of the professional experience that I had post my undergraduate experience at Florida A&M University and post my experience of working at the Florida Department of Corrections in the area of reentry. So I birthed the Gaston Justice Coalition Group, which is a group that helps to advocate various kinds of justice issues on behalf of people who are marginalized or those folks who feel that their voices are not quite being heard, that we help to lobby on their behalf and bring voice to their issues. We do work very closely with the police department, helping to offer diversity, equity, inclusion training among police departments and their leadership so that they could help to work on that fraught relationship that often exists between law enforcement and the African American community. So that's pretty much that program in a nutshell. And I've been working through that program since 2013, and we've done some very transformational work in the community, not just in the Northeast where I currently reside, but all across the United States of America.
Dr. Gaston, when you look at all the things that you've accomplished in your life and you sit back, it's just something so extremely, something to be proud of. You've honestly changed so many lives, and I just wanted to send you a shout out while we're here on the show. You have absolutely helped and continue to help and change so many lives in every breath that you take and every movement that you make.
Oh, thank you.
Well, the question as it poses, you've experienced so much success at a young age. Was there ever any moment that challenged you?
Yes, certainly there were challenging moments in my educational pursuit. Though I flourished in elementary school, middle school, and high school, while I was in high school, I recall the principal of the school saying to me, "Herron, have you ever considered an Ivy League institution?" And at that time, I didn't know anyone in my community that had attended an Ivy League institution or anyone that may have had contacts or reach at an Ivy League institution. So I did not pursue that path. But I did have a conversation with one of my guidance counselors and let her know the conversation I had with the principal and that he saw a sliver of hope in me and saw my potential. And I mentioned the discussion that we had about me looking into an Ivy League institution, and she chuckled violently and said, there's no way in hell that you'll get into an Ivy League institution.
Wow.
And nor did she show me any predominantly white institutions to apply to while I was in high school.
Wow.
And so I took it upon myself to apply to Florida A&M University. So I say all of that to say that, there was sort of a challenging experience coming out of high school in terms of my guidance counselor not seeing the potential clearly that the principal of the school saw in me. But nonetheless, I continued to push through anyway on the educational front. But to fast forward into answering your question more directly, while I was admitted to Yale University after my experience at Florida A&M University, the very first year of my being at Yale, I was brought up on criminal charges.
Wow.
That was stemming from Florida. I worked at a summer camp called Upward Bound. I myself am a recipient of the Upward Bound program. I was Mr. Upward Bound for the University of South Florida, and it asked me to come back the summer just before I matriculated at Yale to help encourage and mentor students in the program. And one of the students in the program, at the conclusion of my being there and returning back to Yale, accused me of sexual misconduct. And so subsequently, I was arrested my very first year at Yale University, which you could imagine was a very difficult and tumultuous experience for
Right.
someone that has such academic prowess, someone who is known all across the community, had a pretty national reputation, in a sense, had worked for a well-decorated governor and several members of Congress. And as I mentioned, having also worked for the late, great John Lewis. So that issue magnified. And so it went everywhere. It went viral. It was all over the internet. I was extremely embarrassed by it. Went through the judicial system for over 9 months. And before the case was finally decided in my favor. And as you can imagine, the collateral damage surrounding my arrest had real consequences on my moving forward. And so as a result of that, I had to spend many years of fighting to have those defamatory articles moved from offline. There were impediments for me to move into the job market and to secure employment for at least several years after the arrest. Also, every date that I go on, people could Google and they'll say, hey, tell me a little bit more about yourself. And in the age of the internet, we live in such a digital age, people sort of Google you before you have a chance to sit down, would say to me, explain to me kind of what happened. And so I would have to go through that whole ordeal over and over and over again, which you could imagine was extremely excruciating and painful.
Absolutely.
Especially considering that it was a false allegation that now was such an intricate part of my story, an intricate part of my life. So I say all of that to say that that was one moment where I looked like I had a moment where I fell from proverbial grace, and I still to this day reel through that pain. But I think that when you have faith and tenacity of a bulldog, you can get through anything. To fast forward, I later pushed through that and had a great opportunity to become a pastor at the Summerfield United Methodist Church in Bridgeport that called me to be their pastor. And I started by getting out in the community, getting a great name for myself that caught the attention of Yale University and other places. And Yale University offered me a job as the assistant director of admissions and recruitment, the first African-American person to hold that position in the history of the institution.
Did that feel awkward, Dr. Gaston? Did that feel awkward?
It did feel awkward initially, but I think that I worked so hard, academically and otherwise to redeem myself, that I thought that it was most fitting and appropriate that they hired the most talented person for the position at that time to do the work that needed to be done at the institution.
Dr. Gaston, when you think back to the time that you were experiencing that whole court case and things surrounding it, what my listeners are going to want to know is, what was your mindset that kept you going? Were there moments of tears? Were there moments of just pain to where, you felt like giving up?
Absolutely. When it first happened, I was numb. I think it took me some time to try to understand exactly what it is that was going on. I was in a tailspin, and my world seemed like it had turned topsy-turvy. It was literally upside down. And, from that emotional shock, it took me at least about a month or so after being behind bars to say, hey, this actually is a charge that you have to fight.
Wow.
And so as a result of that, I went through a series of emotions. And one of those emotions that I had was hiding my face in the sand, staying away from people, not wanting to be bothered with anybody, not knowing if there's anyone that I could trust, that I can share how I'm feeling. I also thought about and attempted suicide, and was hospitalized for a couple of weeks down in Florida.
Right.
And it was a dean from Florida A&M University who had knocked on my door one morning as I was thinking about taking myself out. And she sent me a text message and rang the doorbell and said, whatever it is that you are about to do, God told me not for you to do it. Wow. Because the people will not be able to see that you're going to come out vindicated on the other side. And they would assume that you took yourself out because you're guilty. And so I'm so grateful for her Christian compassion and for listening to that silent, persistent voice that told her to get inside of her car and drive 4 hours to my house.
Wow.
To deliver me that message. And that literally helped to save my life.
Day by day, second by second, I want all the listeners to know, no matter what you are absolutely experiencing, no matter what you go through, there absolutely is a silver lining. There is a way. You can hold on. Don't be afraid to accept and understand the fact of when it even comes to mental health. We all go through something. We all do, no matter who you are. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Gaston?
Yes, I mean, I think that it's just inevitable that, this is a world of great opportunities. You will have moments of happiness. You will have moments of joy. You have moments of peace. But likewise, you'll also have moments of deep deprivation, moments of questioning, moments of trials and moments of tribulation. Life challenges comes to all of us in different ways. And I think that sometimes bad things happen to good people. And I look at the biblical text and I think that it is replete with so many great men and women who have gone through trials and tribulations, but yet holding on to their faith helped them to make it through it. And so I thank God for the faith in him that I was able to turn to a strength that was much stronger than myself. And that's what's kept me going.
Absolutely. Dr. Gaston, right now, there is someone or a group of people who are listening to this podcast. Someone within the listeners may potentially be thinking about suicide. What would you say to them right now?
I would say, hold on. Don't give up. What you're going through is temporary. And what you're going through is solvable. And that if you find good people to listen to speak to about what it is that you're going through, I can guarantee you that they can help you to get to the other side of the thoughts that you may be having right now. Don't give up on yourself. You're stronger. You're better. You're going to be wiser. And you're going to be able to help change and transform someone else who might be going through a difficult time or a difficult moment. And if you are having challenges, especially I'm talking to the African American community right now, particularly, is that there's a stigma around mental health. And I think that we need to reverse that stigma. Absolutely. And to eliminate it totally. And that it is important for us to take care of our personal mental health, just as we take care of our physical selves on a daily basis. Mental health is very important. And I have been in therapy since that time. And I can tell you that it's one of the most rewarding experiences, most freeing and liberating experiences that I've ever had.
I work in mental health as a profession, and I second that motion. It is something that is very important. It's something we shouldn't shy away from, no matter the color of your skin or the culture you're part of. But in African Americans particularly, that stigma that you were speaking of, we need to break beyond that. There is nothing to be ashamed of. We need to absolutely break beyond that and continue to spread that mold away and be able to see clear. We could work together to do it. There's many ways out there and many people that you can touch and resources that you can take part in. It just takes one step at a time. I tend to believe that faith or hope is an ingredient of change. I tend to believe that. I'll say it again, that faith or hope is an ingredient of change. When you can find something in you to believe or give it an opportunity to listen to, that right there is a grain of salt or whatever you're adding to, your meal. It is an ingredient of change. So if you can get to step one, see, sometimes in life we have to fail in order to succeed. And with that, God doesn't necessarily, and I'm not trying to push religion on everyone, but I'll say this from a sense of spirituality. Sometimes in life you're only provided a little bit of light, just enough to take that step. Sometimes it takes you just taking that step in order to get the next step. So I just wanted to place that there. Okay, so we want to fast forward. Okay, fast forward from that point. Okay, so now, what do you have going on right now currently amongst society, amongst the group?
Yeah, so right now I am the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Bridgeport. Okay. I help to oversee 60 departments within the city. It's the largest municipality in the state of Connecticut. And I also have the privilege of continuing to pastor Summerfield United Methodist Church, as I've been there now for 6 years. In the community, I run a program called Youth with a Purpose. We help at-risk youth get into colleges and universities, and also plug them into trade opportunities that lead to successful and rewarding careers. We have a 95% success rate of helping to place students into colleges and universities across the country, many of whom are in the state university in Connecticut, mostly UConn and Quinnipiac University. This program has been widely recognized by members of Congress, Senator Richard Blumenthal, who is the senior senator in the state of Connecticut. We've also gotten recognition and praise from the infamous and my fraternity brother and great mentor, Dr. Cornel West from Harvard University. We've also been recognized by the infamous gospel singer and a great friend and mentor, Donnie McClurkin. So we are doing great work in the community, and I'm continuing to do outreach with youth, similar to what I was attempting to do in Tampa, Florida. So I did not allow that terrible experience to stop me from helping to touch the future.
Now, we're always trying to find ways to, you see the times that we're in, we're always trying to find ways to bridge the gap between, I guess, the police force and the community. Is there anything that you have going on, anything that you're participating part of, any positions being held where you can play a role in that? Sure.
So I am the chaplain for the Bridgeport Police Department of about 400 sworn officers. I also helped to lead a major demonstration after the death of George Floyd. We had hundreds of people to take to the streets fighting against injustice and police brutality. As a result of that, we helped to work with legislatures in the state of Connecticut to help pass a comprehensive, sweeping police accountability bill that's going to help to effectuate change within our local governments, local municipalities. I've been working very closely with the mayor of the city of Bridgeport and some other surrounding mayors on helping to transform their police departments by doing more diversity, equity, inclusion trainings amongst the officers, making sure that we're hiring officers that reflect the diversity of the community, and focusing more so on community-based policing to help heal the divide between the law enforcement community and the community itself. So there are a lot of initiatives that we're working on. Of course, change don't happen from the top down. Change happens from the bottom up, and I think that we're seeing the bottom fizzle up to the top now in terms of making some demands that hopefully will lead towards long-term sustainable change.
Could you tell us more about the church you currently are serving at, as far as maybe times and things of that sort of sermons and location, things like that?
So in terms of the church, right now, as you know, we are in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody has led in the middle of a pandemic unless you're 100 years old or older. And so you could imagine that churches and institutions are being severely impacted by the current COVID crisis. Right. But nonetheless, people have kept their faith. They're still, participating in church via Zoom. We do run some programs in the community where we help to feed over 65,000 members in the Bridgeport community and surrounding areas each year, which is something that we're extremely proud about. I think it speaks directly to the tenets of who we are as a church. Matthew 25 is sort of that text that summons us. It says that, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was in prison, you visited me. So we're focusing on all three of those tenets of feeding the homeless, making sure we're clothing the naked, and we're also providing liberation and opportunities for those folks who are returning citizens. So I think it speaks to the mantra of what I talked about earlier. It speaks to the theme of what my call really is. And so we're continuing that call at the church. Moreover, people are continuing to give the best of what it is that they have under very difficult circumstances. And so I'm proud of the work that we're doing at Summerfield, being a beacon of light, of hope, and inspiration in the community. And we hope to continue to be the light on the hill. If you are a person of faith, prayer is also essentially important. I believe in that. And if you are not a person of faith, I think that you need to do something that helps to ground you spiritually, or help ground you because there's so much that's going on around us.
Here at the show, we have a slogan called Encouragement for Free. So in this particular segment, we're going to I would like for my guests to provide some encouragement for free, no matter what it is.
Yeah, so the encouragement that I would give is, every day that you wake up is a new start. Every day that you wake up is a new opportunity to do something different, to do something that you've always wanted to do that you haven't had the chance of doing. And you can turn the page. You can write a new chapter in the book. So continue just moving forward. I think that if you are looking in the rearview mirror at your life, you should only take a glance back, but you should look further ahead. And I would tell folks that, when you look at the vehicle that most of us drive, you have a windshield and you also have a rearview mirror. If you are looking in the rearview mirror, you're going to crash. But if you're looking at the window in front, it's much bigger. I think it's indicative of the fact that your future is much brighter than where it is that you've been. And so therefore, look at the bigger picture and know that no one is perfect, that no one on this earth has it all together, regardless of how they may purport themselves, and that you are redeemable from any situation. And if the force of nature can conspire to do it for me, then I know that it can do it for you as well.
Dr. Gaston, are there any social media sites that any of our listeners can kind of keep up with what you're doing in the community, things of that such?
So essentially you could go to the GastonJusticeCoalition.com, and there's some information there. Also the church's website, SUMC.org. You'll find information there on Summerfield United Methodist Church's page. There's some stuff on the church's Facebook page as well. And then my personal Facebook page, I tend to post a lot of the things that I'm working on and that I'm doing. I can be found at Keyon, Keyon, Gaston, Gaston.
Dr. Gaston, here at Triumphant Moments, we really appreciate the time that you took out. Look, we want to have you as a guest in the future. So look, the door is wide open and welcome for you.
Thank you so very much for having me on today and taking the time to listen to me. And thanks to the viewers and those who are listening to this great podcast that you have. And I wish you much success on your endeavor in this regard.
Absolutely. We'll see each other and speak to each other again.
Sometimes in life you must fail in order to succeed. But one thing must remain certain, that you never, ever give up. Triumphant moment.